3, 2, 1. We're live.
Hello and welcome back to the Bennetts Life vlog. Bennetts Life
Podcast.
podcast.
This is episode 2. We're still doing it. We didn't quit.
Yes. And today we're going to be talking about living in another country.
Yes, we are.
Because one of us lives in another country, different from their home country.
And one of us has previously lived in other countries.
Yes. And those were the best times of my life, which is why, besides now having a kid.
I was going to say, come on.
Previously to having a child, that was like the highlight of my life. So, which is why we're talking about it, because I think it is good to do. If you have the chance, if you have the opportunity, I would definitely recommend it. So
where have you lived?
I'll give my background. So after college, I went on a volleyball tour to Europe, and we went to, I think, maybe like 5 or 6 different countries over the course of like 2 weeks. And it was basically to try to get placed with a team to play in that country. And I ended up getting placed with a team in Italy. And so I lived in the south of Italy in like the Toe for about 5 or 6 months, and it was awesome. I loved it so much. And then I came home for the summer, and with the intent of going back for the next season. And then they changed the rules over the summer where they couldn't have foreigners on the team anymore, so I didn't get to go back. And then after that, I looked for other opportunities to live in other countries, but I didn't really want to go back to another team in Italy, which that's kind of like, looking back now, I wish I would have tried harder to get back on another team, but I had such a good experience with my team, and I had heard other stories about girls not getting paid on time or not getting paid at all or things like this. So I didn't want to like go back and then have a bad experience. So I just chose to look for another opportunity, which is what led me to England and playing and coaching volleyball and going to school in England. And so I lived in England for about 9 to 10 months, and that's where me and Chris met.
And you can connect the dots and know everything that happened after that.
Yes. And then me and Chris meeting is what led Chris to living here in America now. So I think we are both in agreement. Well, I know we've talked about it previously, but like we would both love to live in another country again.
Is that a mosquito?
No, it's a tree. It's a tree bug. Oh, well. Because Chris was planning to move to Australia when we met. I would love to live in Australia. That's one of the countries that I tried to move to when I was like looking. It was like there or England, because I wanted to be in a place that spoke English, but still a foreign country. So, yeah. Now it's just like the logistics of trying to get there with visas and stuff is kind of what's like preventing us from doing it now. But I think if the opportunity arose, we would both jump on it, right?
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I was in it when me and Casey first met. It wasn't, obviously, we weren't fully committed to each other when we first met each other. We didn't know each other, you know. We weren't married or anything. Weren't even boyfriend and girlfriend then. And at that point, I had my visa to go move to Australia, and so I was ready to be leaving England regardless. Then my now wife is from America, so then we ended up switching that out and coming to America instead. Not a very difficult decision for me, but then I believe I were living in different countries due to circumstance. Like you were living in countries because of volleyball experiences. I've living here because you are from here. It's not like the Australia thing. The Australia thing, I actually chose. Not that I didn't choose to live to in America, but Australia, I had no ties there. I just wanted to go over. I wanted to experience it. I knew I could with being British and getting a visa and being able to work over there is a lot easier than it definitely is trying to get one in America. We'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, so that was the only one I really chose. I think the rest of our living in other places has been circumstantial to what we've been doing in that place. Like right now, if we chose to live in Australia, it would be one of those we decide to do it. I think, if I'm being honest, we're more likely to move back and live in England for a period of time before we move to Australia. Not that I don't want to live in Australia, I just think that it will be easier to live there, families there, and it's a different world. Like, for people that have never lived in other countries and vacation doesn't do it justice. Like, the first 2 weeks of living in a different country is a vacation. Everything that follows after that, then you have to learn to live.
But yeah, adjusting to another culture, learning how people function, like simple things. Going to the grocery store is different. Going to the bank is different. Driving around is different.
Third week in America, I went to the grocery store with Casey and her mom, and I forgot what we were buying, but I needed my ID, and I didn't have my ID on us, because usually if you're not buying stuff in England, you don't not getting the one getting ID'd.
Oh, like alcohol or something?
Yeah, maybe we were having a party or something. I forgot what it was. But I was in the grocery store, and your mom, Casey's mom, gave me her keys. It's like, oh, go get out the car. I spent 10 minutes at the car, couldn't get in the driver's side door because the driver's side door is on the other side over here, and I only had a key to get in the driver's side door. And I'm like, and then I was about to walk in saying, I can't get in your car, and then realized I'm trying to use the wrong door. And so that in itself, like, that was something I wasn't even conscious of, but we were at a grocery store. I needed to go get my ID, which was not normal for me because I didn't just have it in my pocket. And then I couldn't get in the bloody car. 10 minutes later, I come back in, and while they're still at the till waiting to be served.
Yeah, so little things like that, walking to the wrong side of the car, which in a lot of countries is not an issue. They drive on the same side of the road. But, for example, in England, it's different. Going to the grocery store is different in England versus America, and even in Italy.
I think
America just makes it, I think, like having been in different countries, and Chris can vouch for this, like America tries to make everything the easiest that it can for everybody, you know? Like, we are very, like...
lazy?
I wouldn't say lazy, but we just try to make things super convenient. The drive-through ATM.
I never
drive-through Starbucks. Drive-through everything, basically.
People living in England, they're not going to know what an ATM is to begin with.
Yeah, picking up your...
Well, an ATM is a bank. It's a cash point. And here, you never have to get out your car to go to the bank. You can go drive your car around and just put your card in, take money out. So you don't ever have to get out the car. I think if you really wanted to, you could do everything and never get out your car.
That's what I mean. Like, you can pick up your groceries. Now at our new Fry's, we have you just park. I think it's called like
Checkup or click points or whatever.
Something. And they park, and they bring the groceries out to you. They load them in your car, and then boop, you're off. So I think just things like that. America tries to make everything super simple and convenient, and like in other countries, like the grocery store here, things are open 24 hours. If it's 11 o'clock at night and I kind of want some ice cream, I'll just drive down to the store and get something. Super nice. Whereas in England, like if it's Sunday and you needed something for dinner that night, you're kind of screwed because all the grocery stores are closed. Maybe not all of them, but all the ones around you are closed, and there's probably like one an hour away that's still open.
Even during the week, it's very rare that a grocery store, for example, I don't know, we use in grocery stores a lot here, but the grocery store is open till say 7 or 8. It's very rare that there's one that open that late. Usually they're going to be closed at 5. Like all the stores close at 5:30.
Right.
Everybody gets off work at 5:30.
Even shopping, like we can go to the mall usually during the week after people get off work, because when people get off work, that's when they're doing all these things. So here in America, things are open till 8 or 9 o'clock. Target open till like 10 or 11. And in England, it's like things close down at normal work hours. So like 9 to 5. And then after that, I guess you're in the pub or you're with
home,
your
get
family
your tea
or something. Yeah. So.
Here's two things that I think are some of the smallest nuances of living in a different country, but some of the biggest differences that I noticed. And now I am guilty of doing these. I've become Americanized to it. One, if you're in public and you're walking past somebody and you're way far apart, you're still going to say excuse me or sorry for walking past them, even though there's enough room to get 3-4 people down the same place, you know. In England, you would rub shoulders with somebody just to get past them, like in a shop or something like that. The aisle here is in the grocery store again is so wide that you would apologize for walking. Oh, sorry. Excuse me, even though there's so much room to get through, you never needed to ask them to move in the first place.
I didn't really think about that. But yeah, like, so if there's like, say our aisles are wide, I guess, and one person, it's kind of like the road, like one person's going one way, so you go the other way, and say they're probably parked on this side, and they're looking at something on this side of the aisle. And so you're going by, you're walking in front of their line of sight, so you naturally just say, oh, excuse me, even though you're not in their way for, like...
No, you could get past. Yeah, you could get past.
It's just that you're saying excuse me because you're walking in front of something that they're looking at.
Yeah,
or I guess in England you just
walk past.
Yeah.
And you'll be way closer. That can be applied to like personal space here in America.
And that's the next thing I would say, personal
everybody
space.
is far apart from each other in America. It's like super inappropriate to be stood next to somebody because they think you're going to get mugged or something. You can kind of tell
people who are like foreigners here, like people from Mexico or people from, you know, the Middle East, like they stand a lot closer to you. Or even, I mean, I'm just saying those because we have a lot of those type of people here, but you can tell like people who aren't really like
I was like
here.
this for months.
Yeah, is that like people will like in line, they'll stand really close to you, and like as an American, you're kind of like, you're in my bubble, which is probably like 2 feet
twice the size
around
of everybody else's.
You know, and so yeah, but in foreign countries, like people talk a lot closer, so like when you're in conversation with somebody, they're gonna stand a lot closer to you, and like you might have a tendency to like lean back, but that's their culture.
But having lived here for 5 years now, I do that. Like I'm basically, I have the American personal space. It's like, back off, man. And like we went over to England last Christmas and went to the Metro Centre, which is like a mall over there, and people were walking so close to me. And 5 years ago it would have been normal. When I went back over, I realized,
even your family.
I was like I need more. Like when I'm rubbing shoulders with somebody, I'm like, oh, this is uncomfortable. Just back off a second. Like I don't, unless me and Casey are holding hands, we don't even stand like. We stand closer than the normal people I would allow, but like it's not even like we're like all up in each other's space and stuff. But I realized that when I went back, and I was like, oh, that's definitely an Americanism that I've adopted, I guess. I'm now along being a permanent resident, I now have a giant personal space bubble. And the second one that I was going to mention is, and this is again tiny, but say you're driving to go to the cinema, all right, and in my past experience when I'm driving to the cinema, I just pull over in a parking spot and walk to the cinema, regardless of where the parking spot is. Like, obviously, I'm not going to park 5 miles away, but I mean, in the parking lot or the car park, I'm just going to pull over in the first spot I see that's empty. Here in America, you'll drive around for 10 minutes trying to find the closest parking spot to the door you're trying to get into.
The best parking spot.
Yeah.
I think that's what he's saying. No, Americans, they look for the ideal parking space instead of just taking whichever one.
Yeah. And now I'll drive around for 10 minutes just to find a close spot to get into the mall or whatever.
Well, and it doesn't help that we live in Arizona, so it's hot as balls. So you want to be like not having to be outside for that long. And then that's the next one. Like you want to find the spot in the shade. So I think that's the only time that we don't try and park as close as possible to the door is if there's a shady spot at the end of the parking lot, we're going to park in the shade and walk so that your car is not blazing when you have to get back in. Yeah,
because if you've ever lived in a hot place and you come back out to a car, especially a black car.
And now having a baby, like it wasn't that bad when we first moved over because it was just me and Chris, and like I'm used to it because I'm from Arizona. But as soon as we had Bodhi in the summertime, we just felt like awful for having to like put him in like a blazing hot car. The car seat's hot, like it's sad.
So it's the small things. It's not necessarily the big things. There's a lot of big things that we'll speak on in other podcasts, but just like one of the topics I mean is but people can walk around with guns on their hips here in America. Can't do that in England. That's a big thing. Still a big thing for me. 5 years later, that makes me nervous.
And that's like a cultural thing, I think, also, because and I'm sure in other parts of America, it's worse. Like it would be the norm to like be having a gun in your car or something. Like in the South, like guns are a normal thing, and in other parts of America, it'd probably be just as shocking to like see somebody walking around with a gun on their hip.
Yeah.
But definitely from in other countries compared to America, like Chris was like,
I jumped back in the car the first time I saw someone with a gun on their hip. I just got back in. I'm like, Casey's got a gun on his hip, and Casey's like, yep. And I'm like.
Well, the police don't even have guns there, so it's like a rare thing for him to. Well, now he's used to it, but
but we'll talk about that in another podcast about guns and stuff like that and thoughts on it and stuff. But that's one of the big ones. But for the most part, I think first 2 years I was still very English, I think, or very British. Mm-hmm. Now I have traits where I think I purposely make them more British than they need to be, but I am definitely more American or act more American.
Well, and I think talking, being in a foreign country, obviously Chris speaks English, but like that's like a language is something that we haven't brought up about living in a foreign country. So when I was in Italy, I didn't speak Italian, and I was lucky that the president of my team spoke English. It wasn't excellent English, but I was able to communicate, and he was able to teach us things like food items so we could order, and how to ask like what time things are.
How you say pasta?
I didn't become fluent in Italian, but things like that. So if you're living in another country, you have the language barrier, you know, and so that's like a major thing. But obviously being in England, it's not, even though there are like times if you go into certain parts of England, even speaking English, you're not going to understand what they're saying.
What would you say, what was the, when you first landed, and say you've been there for like 2 weeks or whatever, what was the biggest difference for you being in England versus being in America? Like, was there anything? Or were you just, this is cool?
I just loved it. Yeah. I think adjusting to...
What about all the shop people?
I think adjusting to the culture of, like, how things run, like the bank, like the closing times. I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you're trying to, like, do life in another country, like normal errands, like, it is kind of like a major difference, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not from a small town. Tucson, we drive everywhere. So in England, I didn't have a car. So like we walked everywhere. You walk to get your groceries, which means you're carrying your groceries back to your apartment, which is something like I have never walked probably anywhere in Tucson, you know? Like,
it was probably a mile back from the grocery store back to the apartment as well.
Yeah.
Well,
so
up and down hills. So maybe it was
and which is like totally just a where I live thing, because there are places in America where people walk everywhere to get to do everything, so it wouldn't be that big of adjustment if you're from a place like that. But for me, it was like, whoa, like it was cool, you know, like. But sometimes was it a pain if it was raining and you wanted something from the grocery store, or if it's snowing, and like that's another thing. Like I didn't know how to walk in the snow, so now I'm like trying to like walk up like a 45-degree hill without like falling, carrying things.
Yeah,
you
walking
know?
in snow and slush is a skill in itself.
Yes. It was so crazy.
Yeah, where Durham, where we met, it's a city technically because it's got a cathedral, but it's small enough to be a town in comparison to some of these places here in America.
Yeah.
But cobbled, everyone knows everybody. You can walk around, say hello to 100 people all in one day. And here in Tucson, that's a part that I guess I miss sometimes. In Tucson, it's not I'm not saying it's unfriendly.
It's not a community.
Like I could walk a different place in Tucson every day and not bump into anyone that I know. I don't know very many people in Tucson, but I'm just saying, like, it's not like that. There's not as if your friends are easy accessible here. Like, you would have to drive 30 minutes just to get somebody's house. Like, I could walk out of my house in Durham. 2 minutes later, I probably have bumped into 2 people that I already know so far.
Well, and the thing is, like, my best friend lived here in Tucson. We lived in the same city for a long time, and we rarely saw each other in person. Yeah. Whereas, like, if we were to both be living in Durham, we probably would have seen each other every day. Yeah. Not just like bumping into each other on the street, but because the culture, I think, is more social. You know, where in America, it's not. I don't think we're as social.
Well, I think everyone's just there's an element of like a lot more anxiousness, a little bit more fear here in America in regards to talking to the wrong person or saying something. I think, at least personally, like there's a couple of times where you'd look at somebody like, oh, you're not going to say, oh, hey, how you doing? Whereas like in England, you would probably just walk past someone and go, hey, how's it going? And they would be like, hey, how you doing? And that would be that. Over here, you might say the wrong thing to the wrong person and end up getting clipped.
In general, your culture is a more social culture.
Yeah.
Like hanging out, going to, and not to say just like our culture, like the culture is like focused around drinking, but just being together.
Yeah. We go to the pub a lot more.
But like but it's like hanging out. Like in England, people are still going out in their 40s and in their 50s. You know, like
what is my mom and Steve? They're like 50.
Whereas like my parents probably cannot tell you the last time that they were like hanging out in a bar. You know,
that is
it's like a young person thing here, where over there it's just like everybody does it. It's just like
I think it's also a town mentality. Like there's a workman's club in every town for a reason. Like so people can go meet up with their mates after work, you know, and then they bring their missus along with them.
Which is a cool thing. Like that's one of the things that I think would be cool to if we lived over there, you know, because I think together as a couple are pretty like antisocial. Like we don't hang out with other couples. We don't have a lot of family here to hang out with. But I feel like if we were in England, like we would be going to the pub to meet up with your family or something.
It would encourage us more, for sure. And neither of us drink. Well, I don't drink, to be fair, so I don't know how often I would be going to the pub.
I would be going to the pub.
Should be getting Strongbow cider on draft, and I'd have to be carrying it home. But yeah, that's a good one. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, we're probably more social. Don't think about it when you're in the moment, like. Right. But I've definitely become more antisocial. Not even antisocial. Well, yeah, antisocial. I don't really like people anymore. But it's
didn't
more
like people back then either.
It's more easier, I'd say, in that environment to be social.
Yeah.
Because there's like every other shop's a coffee shop or a Starbucks. There, every other place is a pub.
I went out more in England than I ever went out here in America. Well,
party.
I don't know. Maybe it was the same. Maybe it was just my age. But I felt like living in England was like the last time that we really I was really like going out on the regular.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's safe to say we enjoy England and we enjoy America for different reasons. And long term.
But that's the same. The social part is not just for England. Like it was the same way in Italy. Like we were always, and I didn't even speak the language, but I was always out. We were always having late meals as a team or with my president and the other coaches, and it would be like, oh, I'll pick you guys up for dinner at 9:00, and we're having 2-hour meals and drinks afterwards. You know, like that's just the European lifestyle.
And here we're in bed for 7:30 or 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a child now too.
Yeah.
Life has changed a lot since living in Durham.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'd live the same. Maybe we would. Maybe we would still be going out, but the whole.
Well, who would be watching the kids?
Yeah. So our life's changed a lot, but it doesn't mean that we wouldn't be walking around a lot more. Like, you can't walk in Tucson right now, especially if it's between the hours of like 11 and 3, because you're gonna die if you're not from Tucson. If you're not a desert rat, you're gonna get burnt to bits.
Yeah, we would definitely be going out more.
So I think it's safe to say that we have enjoyed all the places we've lived. Like, is there a place you would never go back to?
Nope.
There was a point where I would say I would never live in Seattle again, but I probably would live in Seattle again now.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not in Seattle City, but I mean in Washington. But I don't think I'll ever live in a big city again, just because that wasn't for us.
Yeah, but we like the small townness. As long as a small town has like the basics, like movie theater, restaurants, that sort of thing. Because Corvallis was tiny, but we could still go to the movie theater. Yeah. We still had a variety of restaurants and stuff. And it was in a nice location where we could be at the beach in like 45 minutes. So I think if you're in a small town, it can't be a small town in the middle of nowhere. You still have to be able to do a short drive and get to somewhere exciting.
Well, I think our long-term plans moving forward, I definitely would like a spot in England. I'd love to be able to go there and not on a vacation, go there and live there if we wanted to for months at a time in our own little caravan or little house, little apartment, whatever. Maybe we rent it out to some other people when we're not there.
Yeah.
But I think long-term we'll live in America. I think there's the most opportunities here in America, the American dream and all that. Like we own our own gym over here, which much easier to do over here than it was in England. And I think there's a lot more opportunities here for our son in regards to athletics. If he's going to be athletic, who knows? I'm just saying that. But there's a lot of different cultural differences that I believe are better in England. So if we had 2 spots and we're able to share sometime moving forward, that would be good. But in regards to living in America, we're probably going to end up living back in the Pacific Northwest, because that's the dream life. That's where the tiny home's going to be. Yeah, that's where we're going to have a bunch of land and have a house on it and potentially have a little farm, and then some tiny home hotels. So you'll be able to come stay in our Airbnb tiny homes one day.
Or glamping.
Yeah. But who knows what it holds for us? We might end up living in China. We nearly lived in China at the beginning of the year, actually. I got a job offer, but that didn't come through. I think it was...
I'm not close to the idea. I would definitely live in another country. I think it'd be awesome for Bodhi or future kids to live, to say like, oh yeah, when I was little, we lived in wherever. I don't know. Anywhere but America, you know.
Oh, we just send Bodhi to boarding school in England. Just gives you good life
experience, so. All right, guys. That's all for this podcast. I'm starting to get sweaty in here, and that's all.
I think we're getting better. That was a better one than the first one. So I still haven't figured out on the iTunes yet, but click subscribe on our iTunes so you get these updates and download them, listen to them when you're in the car and stuff like that.
Or if you want to watch the YouTube version, you can go to thebennettslife.com.
YouTube.com/The Bennetts Life. That's our YouTube channel. We vlog, we put up reviews, we put up how-tos, Casey bakes cakes and stuff on it. This is our little show, The Bennetts Life Show. Maybe I'll put like a little logo. If there's something here when you're watching this back, it means I did something in editing afterwards. If there's not, it means I didn't know how. But YouTube.com/The Bennetts Life. And what is it? It's just a journey. It follows on our journey. Like we're saying, we don't know where we're going to end up yet. We might be moving soon. We might be staying here forever. Who knows? Click subscribe and you'll find out. All right. We'll see you on the next one next week. If this is uploaded on a certain day, we'll see you on that day next week.
Ciao.
Bye.